Hi folks, hey, Justin here with Blue Ox. We're here today to show you the installation of a Blue Ox TrackPro weight distribution hitch. Today we're going to put it on the base camp, but it's going to fit most of your smaller model Airstreams in particular. So we'll get right into it. We're going to show you the pieces and parts that are going to come in the box, and then also we'll get into the tools that's going to be required to install that. Just real quickly, the TrackPro itself comes in a 600, 800, 1000, and a 1300 pound tongue weight. These bars themselves here, they're going to have little dashes on them. That's going to differentiate between what size bars we have. We use a tapered, heat-treated spring steel bar. I'll go into a little bit more detail, but what this is going to do for that end user, it's going to have a slight bow or deflection in transit, and what that's going to do is going to give you a smoother ride while you're towing your trailer, and also assist with the sway control part of it. Moving on to the pieces and parts, first thing here is going to be the shank. The shank is the piece that's going to go into the receiver hitch. The standard shank's going to come with a 7-hole. There is different sizes we offer. We also offer hitches that come in the 2.5 inch for your class 5 hitch. Next thing is the actual hitch head itself. It's going to be bolted on here with some lock washers and nuts. This here is going to have built-in caster. I'll elaborate more on caster in a minute, but the caster is going to be a proactive corrective type sway in transit. Nice thing about casters is going to work in all weathers. So I'll elaborate on that here shortly. Next thing is going to be the actual hardware that gets mounted around the frame. You're going to have an adjustable bracket here. It's offset, so it'll allow you for ease of installation without having to move a lot of things. And then you'll have the L bracket that can be adjusted up and down depending on the application. Some additional things, of course, it's going to come with a pin and clip. Additional hardware, show you the Loctite when we get into the installation. Definitely want to show you exactly where that's used and why. Going to have some L-clips, some additional quick links for your safety chains if they're not long enough after you've installed the weight distribution hitch. It's going to give you that extra length. It's going to come with an S-hook snap-up tool here that assists the end user on hooking and unhooking of the bars. And then again, it's going to come with 2 weight distribution bars here moving forward. Some tools that's going to be required. The number one tool that we'd recommend, obviously we're going to have a torque wrench because we're going to have torque settings. Some other things we're going to have is some basic sockets, 1 1/8 and 3/4 inch. Some wrenches. A tape measure. And some type of impact is helpful for the initial install, but you could do it all with just the torque wrench or a ratchet itself. And then on this particular model, on this base camp, you can actually install the offset brackets here without having to remove this, but for ease of installation for some of the end users, if you had a drill with a 3/8 bit driver, you can remove this LP tank cover, and it's going to assist you with the install of your TrackPro weight distribution hitch. The average install time is roughly around 30 minutes, but as you see here, we're getting ready to do it. It might take a little longer to step by step, but it's going to help you through the process and so on. So let's get right to it. Okay, now we're going to move forward here and do the installation process of the TrackPro weight distribution hitch itself. The number one most important thing before we do anything is we got to determine what we call ball height. Ball height is going to be the measurement from the ground to the top of where the hitch ball would be when the trailer is level. So to start with, number one thing is, let's find a level surface to park your camper on. We're going to chalk the wheels to prevent any type of movement. Then we can use our tongue jack here, up and down, till we get the trailer perfectly level. Then we're going to take a tape measure from the ground to the top of where the ball would be. Like in this particular instance would be 24 inches, but that can vary depending on the model. So definitely make sure you do this on your particular model to verify your ball height. So what that means with that ball height is once we go to do this portion here, we're going to set that hitch at that same measurement or just slightly higher. Okay, the first part we're going to grab is going to be our 5/8 pin and clip and the shank itself. Now keep in mind, the shanks can be used in a downward or upward position depending on the application on the vehicle. So that'll give you that adjustment to reach that desired ball height. So we're going to insert this into the receiver. Pin and clip. So now Couple last things about the shank itself. We talked about there's different sizes and such. Also, if you have a class 5 hitch, that's going to be a 2.5 inch receiver hitch. You might have to use a reducer bushing, or we offer a 2.5 inch shank model that allows you to take up some of that clearance in there. Also, some people will use what we call immobilizers on here to prevent this excessive movement. That will also help with any type of wear and such. Anytime we can prevent movement, it's going to prolong the life of everything, including the receiver hitch, our weight distribution hitch, and less wear and tear on the A-frame. And the next piece we're going to grab is going to be the actual head assembly itself here. Okay, I would recommend just setting it down here close because this is a fairly heavy object. You're going to use our 2 3/4 inch bolts, lock washer, and nut. Now, back earlier we was discussing ball height. This is where it's going to be important. So what I would recommend you do is kind of measure here. It's going to give you a kind of an idea or a gauge to where to put the head assembly itself, because we want it as close to 24 inches as possible. We're going to hold this up here. We have all different holes here where we can adjust this. You're usually just going to put it in and measure. And right now I'm about 2 inches high, so I need to drop it down just a little bit. We'll remeasure again. And right now we are about 24.5 inches. That's about as close as we're going to get. If we drop down another hole, we're going to be below that ball height. Then we're already going to start down with a nose down trailer, and that can give you a over exaggerated sway during transit. Going to put a lock washer and nut. Same thing on the second one. If you have access, now you can use an impact and a wrench to snug these up before you torque it, or you can go directly to the wrench and torque wrench here to tighten it. Okay, our torque setting for this particular hardware here is going to be 250 foot-pounds. So we'll set our torque wrench. I preset this to 250 foot-pounds. It's going to be an 1 1/8" socket. We're going to put it on the nut side, and we'll have just a backup wrench here to assist with torquing it. There's that. And we'll do this second bolt the same way. Okay, once we have that torqued, we're good to go here. A couple last things about the head assembly before we move on to the trailer. There is greasers on here, okay, that gets grease on that caster. These are pre-greased when they come from our factory, so they're ready to go. But once or twice a year, or depending on usage, you're going to want to apply a little bit of grease in there. On the hitch ball itself, all hitch ball manufacturers recommend just a light layer of grease here to prevent excessive wear during transit. Now that we have the truck portion set up, the hitch head assembly, now we're going to put the bracketry on the trailer itself. On this particular model, the Airstream base camp, you can install all our hardware without removing the LP tank cover, but to help you with ease of installation, it is helpful to remove the LP tanks and the cover temporarily to install our hardware. Then you'll reinstall that. And once that's done, you're only going to do that one time. After that, it's going to be ready to go. Now we'll move forward to the bracketry that's going to be put on the A-frame of the trailer. As you can see on this particular base camp, we've removed the LP tank cover and LP tanks just to, one, show you a little better demonstration of the install. But again, you can do it without removing that on this particular model. First thing we're going to grab is our offset plate and a bracketry here, 2 1/2" bolts and nylock nuts. These plates here can be used in 2 different directions. Okay, that offset can go forward or reverse. What we're looking for when we go to install this is center of ball, the center of where this adjustable L bracket is going to go. We want to see 20 to 25 inches. So I'll demonstrate that here once we go to put this plate on here. So again, this plate can go forward or it can be flipped around and used in reverse mode. On this particular base camp, they work better in the reverse mode. So this one here is going to go on the passenger side, and we're going to use this offset towards the back here on the driver's side. So we put the top bolt in and nylock nut just loosely installed, set it up over the top here. The next bolt, we're going to use the highest hole possible here. See, that's hitting the frame, so we're going to go to the next hole down. We don't want to go just down here to these additional holes because that can allow our bracket to tilt excessively in transit and cause damage to the hitch work. Again, on this particular base camp, using the offset backwards to get that desired measurement from the center of the ball to the center of the adjustable L bracket settings. So I'm going to take this L bracket and kind of just demonstrate here exactly where this is going to go. This L bracket is sitting right here. Okay, so we're looking 20 to 25 inches here. So we're going to take our tape measure. We're going to measure from the center of those holes right there to the center of the coupler. Right now we're at 23 inches, so we're within that ideal measurement, that 20 to 25 inches. Now, you're going to use a 3/4 inch socket and wrench, and we're going to tighten this sandwich bracket assembly up here. Okay, now we're going to secure the hardware here. If you're going to use some type of impact device, take caution here to not over tighten those hardware there, because you can bend this bracketry and then it's going to allow it to walk down the frame. But again, don't leave it so loose that you can move it by hand. But it might slightly tilt one way or another in transit, and it'll stay that way. What it does, it mates up to the bottom side of our tapered bar to create more contact of the L bracket, which more contact on the L bracket creates more friction and more sway characteristics built in. So we'll go ahead and tighten this up. Again, don't over tighten it, just good and snug. Once we've done that, we're going to double check our measurement here. We're going to take this opposite side bracket and repeat the same exact process here on the passenger side. So again, we'll double check our measurement, which is roughly 23 inches. We're going to come over here, double check our measurement, and roughly 23 inches. Okay, now that we have the brackets attached to the A-frame, we're going to move forward here to do the L brackets. The L brackets are going to have 5 holes in them. In our instruction manual, it's going to say use number 2 and 3. You're going to leave 1 hole present. Okay, it's going to go in these top 2 holes here on this sandwich bracket. This has adjustability though, depending on the tow vehicle and the load that you're carrying, so you can adjust this up and down depending on that load. So to install these, we're going to have 2 1/2-inch bolts here. This is where the Loctite's going to come into play. Okay, so we'll hold this up here. We're going to apply Loctite to the threads. We'll hand start these like so. We're going to set our torque wrench to 78 foot-pounds. 3/4 inch socket. And continue on with the second bolt. Now that we have this side tight and properly torqued, we're going to continue on over here to the passenger side and do the same way. And again, don't forget to use that blue Loctite. And properly torque that to 78 foot-pounds. So now we have all the hardware installed on the trailer. We have all the hardware installed on the tow vehicle. Now we're ready to mate the two, and we'll move on to the next step. And now with the assistance here with the helper, or on some particular models, you're going to have a backup camera or some type of alignment device. We're going to start the vehicle, we're going to back the vehicle up, put the hitch ball directly under the coupler. We're going to then lower the coupler or the tongue jack down onto the hitch ball, engage the coupler lock. And now that the hitch ball is directly under the coupler, we're going to use the tongue jack here and we'll lower it down to apply some of the weight on top of the hitch ball so that we can engage the coupler locking device here. And at this point is one of the most important steps with any type of weight distribution. It's preloading the bars. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the tongue jack itself to actually raise this up. It's going to lift the back of the vehicle and the front of the trailer. I'm going to over exaggerate here and say kind of an A-frame effect. You'll hear that in the industry. But basically it's called preloading. What it's going to do with the geometry of these bars, it's going to bring it up. What that allows you guys to do as the end user is a lot easier hitching and unhitching on the bars itself. So this is a really, really important feature to make sure you use and get used to doing. Because if not, you know, there's a lot of pressure on these bars because that's what weight distribution is doing. It's helping to distribute some of the weight. So again, use the term of hitch it and lift it. So we've done hitched it, now we're going to lift it. The higher you lift it, the easier it is to engage the bars. Okay? So as you can see, we have this extremely lifted and the front of the vehicle lifted. It's preloading, so when we engage this bar on here and lower it back down, not all of this truck is taking the weight. These weight distribution bars are helping take some of that weight to give you that comfortable, safe towing experience. Okay, moving on to the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to insert our tapered spring steel bar here with pin and keeper. Just keep in mind the notches to determine the weight rating. We want those in the upward position. Lock that in. As you can see, I've already moved this down slightly from earlier what I described. We have that adjustability in there because it had too much of a length here to reach up to this L bracket. So that is adjustable depending on your application, on what type of tow vehicle and trailer that might be. So just keep that in mind. I have already adjusted this and set it to 78 foot-pounds. Now, we'll take our tool, goes under the bar, into the hole here, okay? Kind of stand off to the side, it's going to lift up and snap in. Okay? Next step, our L keeper and clip. I would advise putting the clip in from the front to the back, just in case you are in transit and there's a road obstruction that comes up and hits that. It's just going to push the keeper on further so it doesn't become dislodged and lost. Now you're going to repeat that on the other side and do the same thing. All right, now that both the L pins and clips are installed on both sides, the very next step is we're going to use our tongue jack, and this is when we're going to start lowering it down and putting the weight back on the vehicle. What this is going to do, this is where the weight distribution comes into play. Instead of the vehicle taking all the weight, some of that weight's going to be put on that bar itself. And as I go down, you'll see these bars will slightly have a deflection to them. That's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. That's going to give you that smoother ride in transit. Okay, now all the weight is on the actual weight distribution hitch and the tow vehicle. The ideal measurement here, if we measure from the ground to here, is going to be roughly 24 inches. We'll measure that. And we are right on cue, about 24.5. And again, when I initially set up that ball height, it was roughly about a ½ inch high, so this is a perfect setup here. So now we would continue to raise the tongue jack all the way up. We're then going to remove the foot pad and store, and we'll continue to raise this jack up above the lowest point of the hitch work so we don't prevent any type of drag during in transit going in and off of uneven terrain. All right, and now we'll move on to the last few safety items that we need to make sure is attached to the towed vehicle. We'll start with the safety chains. We advise them to be crossed, okay? If your chains don't have clearance here, We provide quick links right here. They can be attached to the hitch to extend that slightly for you. But on this particular hitch, we won't need these. Take the driver's side here, and we're going to bring it across to the passenger side. And as you can tell, those are crossed in an X pattern. Next thing is going to be the safety breakaway device. It's also going to get attached to the hitch itself. And then the 7-way cord here. Gets plugged into the 7-way socket on the truck. That's going to provide you the lighting and braking while you're in transit. And now that we have the TrackPro hooked up, we're going to reinstall the LP tank cover and LP tanks. So now that we have everything hooked up, and this is what it's going to look like going down the road, when you get to the campsite or home or wherever you might be, your destination might be, your next step is, obviously, you got to unhook. So let's move into unhitching here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to reinstall our foot pad. Then we're going to use our tongue jack. We're going to raise the front end of this trailer. Again, the same term of the hitch it and lift it, that lift it method. The higher we lift it, the easier it is to remove the bars. As I'm cranking this down here, I wanted to kind of explain something before I go too far. If you need additional lift to help take the spring tension, the weight off of these bars, use some type of hitch block or device under there. It's going to give you additional lift. That would go under the tongue jack foot. It's going to give you that additional lift. The higher we lift it, the easier it is to remove the bars. Just kind of keep that tip in mind. It is very helpful to have some of those in certain applications. Okay, I've already released the bar off of the L bracket on the other side. I'm going to demonstrate here on the driver's side how to release that. Again, now that we have it properly lifted, you can tell a lot of the weight is off this bar. Okay, so then we can remove the pin and L keeper. I would highly recommend you're going to stand off to the side. You can use your tool here. You can come in here. You're going to use this and pry directly out till it's released. Now, if that had tension, it could pop and make a little bit of noise, but that's why I would like you to stand out to the side so it doesn't cause any harm or damage here. And next, we'll remove the bars. And we're going to repeat on the passenger side. Okay, now that we got the weight distribution bars disengaged, we're going to use the tongue jack and we're going to lower it back down. We're going to slightly, again, put just a little bit of the weight back down on the actual vehicle suspension. What that's going to allow us to do is to release the coupler device here. And we're going to lift up to release the coupler device. Then we're going to raise the tongue jack back up, and it's going to allow the coupler to disengage from the hitch ball. The last few things we got to disconnect is going to be our safety items, is our 7-way cord, our safety breakaway device, and our safety chains. Now that we've done that, just make sure there's plenty of clearance from the coupler from the hitch ball, and then the tow vehicle could be pulled away. This is the complete hitching and unhitching of your Blue Ox TrackPro weight distribution hitch on an Airstream base camp. If you have any technical or maintenance questions, refer to your owner's manual or feel free to contact Blue Ox customer care.